feels to be free, to be free, to be free.
Stand on the rock of freedom, stand on the rock for justice.
Stand on the rock for liberty, we must stand upon the rock.
Stand on the rock,
Stand on the rock, we stand. Stand on the rock for liberty, we must stand upon the rock.
We're taking a stand against all hatred and greed. We must stand upon the rock.
And showing compassion for those in need, we all must stand upon the rock.
For peace in all places where there's conflict and war, we must stand upon the rock.
Respecting all people for who they are, we all must stand upon the rock.
Stand on the rock.
Stand on the rock for freedom, let it ring stand on the rock for liberty, we must stand upon the rock. Oh, rocks don't fall on me, oh, rocks don't fall on me, rocks and rocks don't fall on me, rocks don't fall on me, stand on oh, rocks don't fall on me, rocks and mountains don't fall on me, stand on the rock, stand on the rock for liberty, we must stand upon the rock.
Stand on the rock. Stand on the rock.
Stand on the rock, stand on the rock, just stand upon the rock. Stand on the rock, stand on the rock, just stand upon the rock. Stand on the rock, stand on the rock, just stand upon the rock. Just stand on the rock for liberty, we must stand upon the rock. I wish I knew how it would feel to be feathers that could fly. I would soar to the sun and look down at the sea. And I sing because I know. And I sing because I know. And I sing because I know how it feels to be free, to be free, to be free.
Stand on the rock of freedom. Stand on.
Yeah. Ooh. Go up. Good morning. Welcome to Cedar Lane. I'm Reverend Dana Edwards. My pronouns are she and her, and I am a middle-aged white woman with short brown curly hair, and I'm wearing a stole with a heart on one side and a chalice on another, and a rainbow connecting the two, and a maroon dress. Welcome again to Cedar Lane, and I invite you this morning to turn and greet your neighbor.
It's a beautiful day at Cedar Lane Unitarian Universalist congregation. All right, that got your attention. Welcome. Welcome. Welcome to Cedar Lane Unitarian Universalist congregation, a community where love works. It sure does. I'm Abhi Janamanchi, one of the ministers serving our religious community with my colleagues, the Reverend Dana Edwards and Reverend Ali Casey Bell, who we are eager to welcome back. He is returning this week. Yes. My pronouns are he and him, and today I'm wearing a blue shirt and a blue vest and a blue stole, a beautiful quilted stole, and I am an Indian male in my 50s and rather short. This morning we gather on the sacred lands of the Nacotchtank people, part of the Piscataway group of tribes, as we have gathered for over 70 years, and on the land on which enslaved African people and their descendants labored and lived without choice or reward. We offer our gratitude and honor the land and the people who have protected it through the generations. And at Cedar Lane, we say, whoever you are, whomever you live, whomever you love, wherever you live, whatever your beliefs, sexual orientation, gender identity, documentation status, and disability, and wherever you're joining us from, in person or online, you are welcome here. An especially special welcome to all our newcomers and our guests this morning. If you're here in person and feel comfortable, would you please raise your hand so we may see you and offer you a warm Cedar Lane welcome. And welcome to all those who are joining us online. Please share in the chat where you're joining us from. And after our service, please join us for fellowship, coffee, tea, and donuts. Yes, our youth are back with donuts this Sunday, folks. And we also have some very special cookies and refreshments that our Immigrant Justice Ministry team is providing in honor of some of our families who are joining us this morning. A welcome back to Doña Rosa, Juan Pablo and Maria, who are joining us after so many months. Welcome back. And a special welcome to members of the Alakazai, Momand, and Nawabi families who are also joining us here in worship this morning. We're so glad you're here today. Thank you. Welcome. If you would like to know more about Unitarian Universalism or how to get involved in this congregation or become a member of our religious community, we invite you to fill out the newcomer form that is being linked in the chat, or return it to a greeter. There are forms available here. And if you're interested in becoming a member, please see me or Reverend Dana after the service. We would be happy to speak with you and connect you in ways how you can become engaged and involved here. Our weekly e-newsletter is a great way to stay updated about all the happenings at Cedar Lane. You can sign up through the link on our website's homepage, cedarlane.org. Our pastoral visitors are an extension of our ministry team. Mala Wedberg is our pastoral visitor here today, and she's available to you for connection, support, or being a listening presence. Thank you, Mala, for your ministry. And we also have pastoral visitors online who are available. Whew. Let us now center ourselves with these words of invocation from the Indian poet Rabindranath Tagore.
Where the mind is without fear and the head is held high, where knowledge is free, where the world has not been broken up into fragments by narrow domestic walls, where words come out from the depth of truth, where tireless striving stretches its arms towards perfection, where the clear streams of reason have not lost its way into the dreary desert sand of dead habit, where the mind is led forward by thee into an ever-widening thought and action, into that heaven of freedom. My God, let my country awake. May it be so.
Good morning. I'm Melissa Reichley. I'm your worship associate this morning. My pronouns are she, her. I'm a middle-aged white woman, average height, reddish-brown curly hair, glasses, and this morning I'm wearing a light blue button-up shirt and black pants. As members of the Nawabi family, the Al-Khazai family, the Momand family, and the Gutierrez family, I think we have one or two from each family. Please come join us as they join us to light our chalice today. Please rise in body or spirit to share the chalice lighting words. We light this chalice to honor the memory of those who have come before us, kindling flames of wisdom in testing times, willing to challenge orthodoxy even at great personal risk, giving us a legacy of freedom and a love of truth, a legacy that gives us courage and strength to continue the struggle for freedom and liberation. Good job. Thank you. Let us sing hymn 153, Oh, I Woke Up This Morning.
Freedom.
I woke up this morning with my mind stayed on a few announcements. There's a hard hat tour after service today at noon to see for yourself what's happening behind these walls and those doors, all the wonderful things that are happening, transforming our spaces as we speak. And it is anyone who wishes to go on it is welcome to, and it will be led by our member and owner's rep, Larry Stalzer. Thank you, Larry. And in case you don't recognize, look for the hard hat afterwards. Continuing, we are kicking off next Sunday, October 8th, the Elevate Our Vision, a mini capital campaign, which will be a short, intense campaign this fall, which the Board of Trustees announced a special fundraising campaign to ensure that Cedar Lane is able to complete this transformational, once-in-a-lifetime renovation debt-free with some additional modern AV equipment that we need for our multi-platform ministry, some beautiful new furnishings and furniture that would replace these gorgeous plastic chairs, and also some refreshed, renovated, refurbished classrooms downstairs. So next Sunday, October 8th, please join us for worship and a reception following the service to celebrate our commitment to transforming Cedar Lane's buildings to better meet our needs and also the needs of future generations. And we will be celebrating together with music, good food, and some inspirational words. So hope to see many of you there next Sunday. And the board also invites you to join them for an online information session on Thursday, October 5th on Zoom at 7 p.m. to share some project progress and the fundraising efforts, and also have opportunities for you to ask some questions. Please check the e-news for registration information. Moving on, on Saturday, October 7th at 1 p.m., the Piscataway Kainai tribe is doing a music and dance presentation at the National Gallery of Art. If you're interested to go, please reach out to Eileen Louie, who will be able to guide you on how to get there. And last but not least, I'd like to welcome Charlene Belson-Zelmer, one of the leaders of our Immigrant Justice Ministry team and our Afghan support team, to come forward and share a little bit more about our ministry. Welcome, Charlene.
Good morning. I'm Charlene Belsom-Zelmer, and my pronouns are she, her, and I'm a short, white lady, aging, light brown hair with silver flecks, and I'm wearing a green shirt with a black sweater and black pants. Great, right? This morning I stand before you, dear Cedar Laners, to review our long history in summary of service to and relationships with those who have been displaced. In the 53 years of my and Bill's membership here, we've been involved in many campaigns that offer welcome and comfort to our siblings from around the world. From our support in the 80s to Coptic Christian families who are now vital community members, to our partnership with our Unitarian siblings in Transylvania who struggled for decades of oppression, to the early 2000s when we offered support to our new Syrian neighbors who report now feeling well established in the community, we have stepped up and stepped into the arena of radical hospitality. After our southern border witness trip in 2016, we established the Immigrant Justice Ministry team, whose activities led us to vote to be a physical sanctuary congregation. In December 2018, we welcomed into residence Rosa Gutierrez Lopez and her family as she sought protection from unjust deportation. They are here today to share in the celebration of our ongoing friendship. When it became clear in the summer of 2021 that many Afghans who had stood with our allies for 20 years would need shelter and support, we launched the Afghan Resettlement Support Team. With local resettlement agencies, we set up apartments for 3 Afghan families who continue the mighty, challenging task of making the U.S. their chosen home. The Nawabi, Al-Khazai, and Moman families are with us this morning to celebrate that friendship. Our engagement continues with those who seek comfort and support as they arrive at our southern border as well. Many still come on buses bussed by grandstanding governors from Texas and Arizona and find respite and guidance before moving on from here or settling here. The needs are great and ongoing. Our engaged community has always stepped up to side with loving kindness in the face of injustice toward our neighbors near and far. Do we want to continue to act with faith-based radical hospitality? If so, how? First, I would encourage you to ponder the blessings of our past and present relationships with those who have been marginalized and oppressed and seek comfort here. Imagine how you and your family can continue to make a difference. Then fill out the survey that was posted in the e-news this week. We're collecting all that information and we'll report back to you on the 15th. There'll be a special luncheon and conversation about how we can continue this special work for our immigrant siblings. May we always side with love and continue to share the blessings.
We now move into the space of naming and sharing the joys and sorrows in this community and beyond. Let us center ourselves and enter into this moment, calling upon all the sources of love that are within, among, and around us. We lift up those in our community who are living through significant passages, the small and extraordinary milestones of life. We pause to be present to our spiritual companions and the concerns of our own hearts. Within our Cedar Lane community, we hold in our hearts those who are mourning a deep loss, those whose lives have passed who still enrich us, those for whom parenting is a spiritual practice, those who live with or care for someone with grief or chronic pain, and those struggling with illnesses seen and unseen, with mental illness and addictions. Our caring extends beyond Cedar Lane to others whose lives are lost and whose lives are impacted by war, violence, and calamities in our nation and in our world. May these friends of ours, our companions in the world, and all the joys and sorrows we hold in our hearts be held in the embrace of prayer and silence.
Let us center ourselves for a time, inviting our mind, body, and spirit into this space made sacred by our presence and the presence of the holy that is known by many names and beyond all naming, in which we live, move, breathe, and have our being. Would you join me in the spirit of prayer, meditation, or reflection? Nameless one of many names, Spirit of life and love, kindness and compassion, we arrive from different places to this sacred ground of our communal caring. We are enriched by the company of each other and are drawn closer to the heart of love in this time together. O Holy One, touch this gathering with tenderness, so that we may be refreshed anew by the grace that encompasses this day. Spirit of mercy, we are human and fragile and sometimes frightened. We pray for the blessing of compassion as we face our frustrations and our challenges and our pain. We pray for the blessing of courage to help us live with the fear of losing and the sorrow of loss. We especially pray for all those among us who need to feel the warmth of love in their lives. O Spirit that glows in the darkness, expand our vision with faith, so that we may always remember the unending circle of life and death and love reborn that connects us one to another, within, among, and beyond, and that surrounds us and enfolds us as we live into the vision of the beloved community. O Spirit that glistens in the light, bless this community that shares so generously with their hands and their hearts and their lives. Keep us ever mindful of the powerful possibilities of love as we journey through all the seasons of our lives. In the name of all that is holy and life-affirming and life-sustaining, we say Shalom, Salam, Om Shanti, Amen, Ashe, blessed be. As we enter the silence together, you're invited to rise in body and or in spirit and to speak the names of loved ones that you're holding in care or in remembrance, or share their names in the chat. Let us enter the silence. Margaret Levchenko, Francis Dearman, Pat Carlson, Brian McLaughlin,
Each Sunday, we give and receive an offering to sustain the mission and ministry of this religious community, as well as supporting a community organization or a cause that's in alignment with our mission. Our offering to the congregation, our offering reminds us that we are actually offering to our congregation. Yep, we are, as well as to our community. And we're reminding ourselves that our congregation belongs to us, to each of us, as well as the whole of us. It is an extension of our gratitude for our spiritual home, where we are invited to be who we are, as we are, and to live lives of joy, hope, integrity, and service. This morning, we share the plate with Through Piscataway Eyes, a nonprofit serving the Piscataway Kainai tribe. At every Sunday service, we mention the Piscataway in our land acknowledgement, and the tribes ask us for more than an acknowledgement. They want us to give back. Through Piscataway Eyes addresses insecurities in healthcare, education, food, and land access, and our donations are one way to support the tribe whose land we occupy. There are many ways to give at Cedar Lane. You can give electronically by mailing a check or by placing your offering in the offering plate. However you choose to give, we are grateful for your support and your generosity. The offering will now be gratefully given and received. May it be so.
We who believe in freedom cannot rest. We who believe in freedom cannot rest until it comes. We who believe in freedom cannot rest. We who believe in freedom cannot rest until it comes. Until the killing of black men, black mothers, sons, is as important as the killing of white men, white mothers, sons. That which touches me the most is that I had a chance to work with people, passing on to others that which was passed on to me. We who believe in
Oh, Rachel, wow. 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 We who believe in freedom cannot rest until it comes. Banned Books Week, which starts today and goes through the week, celebrates the freedom to read and spotlights current and historical attempts to censor books in libraries and schools. For more than 40 years, since 1982, there have been all sorts of events to mark, commemorate, and celebrate Banned Books Week in libraries, bookstores, and faith communities in shared support of the freedom to seek and express ideas, to celebrate banned or challenged books, and draw attention to the harms and dangers of censorship. The American Library Association's Office for Intellectual Freedom has been gathering data on banned books since 1990, detailing the various books and reasons groups and individuals seek to get these books removed from schools and libraries. So every year they compile a top 10 or 13 list of books most challenged during a particular year. And according to the Office for Intellectual Freedom, book banning increased by 38% in 2022. And more than 1,600 books were banned in 86 school districts and 26 states in our country. And of the record 2,571 unique titles targeted for censorship, most of them were by or about LGBTQIA+ people, women, Black, Indigenous, people of color, and people of Jewish, Muslim, or Hindu heritage. While only about 10% of these attempts actually resulted in the removal of books from libraries or schools, over 250 books were banned this year. Books like Genderqueer by Maya Kobabe, All Boys Aren't Blue by George M. Johnson, The Bluest Eye by Toni Morrison, Flamer by Mike Curato, The Absolutely True Diary of a Part-Time Indian by Sherman Alexie, Earl and the Dying Girl by Jesse Andrews, and Crank by Ellen Hopkins. These are just a few examples. We have a display at the back of some of these books that you're welcome to browse after the service. While 39% of these books were challenged by parents, and 24% by library patrons, 6% by teachers or librarians, only 1% of the challenges came from students. There is a significant rise, however, from some of the elected leaders, religious groups, and interest groups calling for censorship. For example, the Walton family and the DeVos family, the former Secretary of Education, have been deeply involved in getting books banned around the country. Assuredly, banning books is no means to protect our children or control what they may learn or what they should think. In fact, the opposite is true. As cartoonist and animation producer N.D. Stevenson said, and I quote, "Censorship will not make people straight or cisgender. Censorship will not stop kids from taking drugs. Censorship will not stop teenagers from having sex or being sexually abused. We cannot keep our children whole by banning the truth. We cannot heal the wounds the world inflicts on people by banning the truth." Book bans are about censorship. They're about marginalizing people. They're about marginalizing ideas and facts. However, let's not think that this is only happening now, here in the United States. This is not the first movement to ban books in our nation. We have been through this before. Similar efforts have taken place in our country's past to limit and manipulate access to education and maintain the status quo. Notably, laws prohibited enslaved persons from learning how to read to limit their progress, as well as to prevent them from knowing their history and contributions to society. And of course, globally, in 1933, what is thought to be the largest ever book burning took place in Nazi Germany to silence the voices of Jews and to send a message to those who opposed their racist, genocidal regime. I submit to you that banning ideas and books leads to fascism. And I have good company there. I want to quote Representative Jamie Raskin, who wrote, "Whipping people into a frenzy against books, banning books in libraries and schools, and demonizing authors, these are hallmark strategies of authoritarianism." As a constitutional lawyer, I think he has a few things to say about this. He continues, "You've got to view the ban on books and the attempt to stop critical race theory, by which they mean any teaching of the actual history of our country with respect to racism and white supremacy. All of these are efforts basically to condition children and young people to get ready for being subjects in an authoritarian society." And he says, "Our First Amendment does not allow government officials to strip books from schools or public libraries simply because they think the content is offensive or they disagree with its viewpoint. No government official can ever prescribe politically correct orthodoxy." Woo! He is good. "Politically correct orthodoxy for reading or ban politically incorrect expression. The people have the right to read and write freely." Amen. I mean. He couldn't be there yesterday at the Banned Books Festival because as he was on his way to River Road to do his keynote, he was called in to the House to debate and discuss the continuing resolution, which was the right thing to do. And Representative Raskin called me after the vote to apologize for not being able to be there and encouraged all of us to continue fighting the good fight. And I thanked him and I said, we let people know that it was all Speaker McCarthy's fault. And he agreed. Anyway, it was wonderful to speak to him yesterday. It is frequently claimed by opponents of censorship that banning books and discussions about structural racism or militarism or poverty or sexual orientation, gender identity, sexual health, sexual abuse, immigration, disability, pluralism, diversity, is freeing schools of indoctrination. And yet, indoctrination rarely takes place by allowing the free flow of ideas. In fact, indoctrination takes place by banning ideas. Jason Stanley, who's the author of a powerful small book called How Fascism Works, The Politics of Us and Them, writes, democracy involves informed decision-making about policy. These laws and bans are intended to render such deliberation impossible when it comes to minority groups. These bans, make it illegal to teach students about how to form social movements to challenge dominant interests and structures. These bans signal the dawn of a new authoritarian age in the United States, where the state uses laws restricting speech to intimidate, bully, and punish educators, librarians, forcing them to submit to the ideology of the dominant majority or lose their livelihoods and even their freedom. Now, in his book that I highly recommend to you, Stanley outlines 10 tactics of political fascism, which he describes as an ideology, but also, more importantly, as a political method. Now, the tactics that he describes are all bundled together and are interconnected. I won't go into all of them today, but only will lift up a couple of them. Tactic number 3 is anti-intellectualism, which is being threatened by multiple perspectives of history, expertise, and science. Tactic number 8 is sexual anxiety. In a fascist society, the leader who demands complete allegiance is threatened and feels the need to terrify the population that their children and women are under threat from gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgender people and their families. So, why is this important to us, Unitarian Universalists? I mean, why are we setting aside time on a Sunday morning in worship to celebrate banned books and talk about freedom? Well, in our spiritual heritage within Unitarian Universalism, we have had a strong connection, foundation, and commitment to freedom. In fact, one of our principles affirms and promotes a free and responsible and what used to be a disciplined search for truth and meaning. And we also, in covenantal language, uphold the quest for truth as our sacrament. In fact, the covenant that we have spoken before from James Willow Blake goes, "Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another." Now, we can trace our history and heritage back hundreds of years, always able to point to defending and sacrificing for some of our most cherished rights, including religious liberty, free speech, the free pulpit, the right to assemble, freedom of thought and expression, and freedom of belief, and an openness to different sources of meaning to which we may lend our own powers of discernment and glean wisdom. All this to say, in short, the celebration of the freedom to read whatever it is we want to read is, religiously speaking, right up our alley. And it is that simple and not so simple. So, this is the beginning of Banned Books Week. And I close with these words from my colleague, the Reverend Emily Gage, who tells us to get out there and celebrate the freedom to read whatever it is you want to read. Choose something that will help you expand your horizons, make you uncomfortable, see life in a new way, build connections with someone who may seem totally different from you. More importantly, share your stories of who you are and open your heart and mind wide to listen to the stories of all around you. It matters. It matters because every moment, with every choice we make, we are casting a vision of the world we want to be in. A world not of isolation, but of connection. A world not of silence, but speaking out. A world not of fear, but of love. A world not of uniformity, but diversity. A world not of conformity, but freedom. Let freedom read. Yep. So now that I have depressed you and made you feel maybe a little awful, I would now like to welcome acclaimed author of 150 books, including the Shiloh Newbery Award-winning book Shiloh and the Alice series, both that have been challenged and banned around our country, and Cedar Lane member, Phyllis Naylor.
Thank you so much for such a warm welcome. This was the church that my family first became Unitarians, so it has a special place in my heart. In the 60 years that I've been writing full-time, some of my books have been banned for 4 different reasons: witchcraft, swearing, religion, and sex. My first encounter with censorship was in a school library. I'd just given a talk, and it was about the first novel that I had published by Athenaeum. It was also the first book in a 6-book series. A parent had listened in, and she asked if she could talk with me when the kids went back to their classrooms. And of course, I sat down with her at a library table, and she reached across the table and took my hand. "I love you," she said, "and Jesus loves you. So why are you writing books about witchcraft when there are all those people in California running around wearing necklaces made out of the bones of unborn babies?" For a moment, I was speechless. "Where are you getting your information?" I asked. "Pat Robertson's 700 Club," she told me. "Have you even read my books?" I asked her. "No," she said. "Do you plan to read them?" "No," she said, "but I'll pray for you." The books, I agree, are scary. That's why children love them. The first book was published in 1975, and it's still in print. They concern two girls who suspect that an elderly woman in their community, who often babysits, is a witch. The adults do not. The final book leaves you wondering just a bit, was she or wasn't she? There were mild comparisons to the books I grew up with. Let me show you. I'm supposed to be showing you the covers of books while I talk. These were books trying to think about the kinds of books that I grew up with. The evil witch who tried to poison Snow White, the witch who put children in the oven to bake, the evil stepmother who was punished by having to wear red-hot dancing slippers for the rest of her life. No one objected to that I knew of. The second thing that I've been accused of, obscene language and swearing. My book, The Fear Place, is about a family who spend the summers in the West. The parents are scientists, and they do their research in the wilds. And at some point, the parents get an emergency call that they need to go home for a couple days. And rather than pack up camp only to come back later, the parents trust their boys, who are 11 and 13, to get along because they're experienced campers. Unknown to the parents, however, the two boys have been squabbling over something recently. And alone with each other, their antagonism gets even worse. They each have jobs to do, and the older one is finishing some paperwork for his mother, then folding the sheets of paper, putting them in envelopes, and placing a stamp on each one. The younger one, just to be annoying, snickers and tells his brother that he peed on those stamps the day before. The older boy leaves camp rather than have a tussle with him, and just goes off a mountain trail for a while. But when he doesn't come back, the younger boy has to go after him, and he's afraid of heights. This is a real challenge for him. The story ends with the younger boy carrying his brother, who has broken his leg, back to camp. The plot is scary, it's full of danger and excitement, guilt and courage, but a mother wanted it removed from the school library because it had the word pee in it. Shiloh was banned in a number of schools because of obscene words. The man, it's the story of an 11-year-old boy in hill country of West Virginia who wants to keep a forlorn, ill-treated beagle who keeps running away from its cruel owner. The man was beaten and cursed by his own parents when he was young, and now he takes it out on his dogs. The second time the dog runs away and comes to Marty Preston, the boy hides it against his father's wishes, and he saves parts of his dinner to bring it up to the dog. Then a German shepherd comes by some night and finds the hideout and seriously injures the little beagle, so the secret is out. They take the dog to a doctor who sews him up, but now Judd Travers, the bad man, hears about it, and he rages over Marty's deception. In a couple of instances, when Judd is raving, he uses the words, "damn it," and "hell." And that was enough to set the crazies loose. Nobody complained that Judd was a horrible example of what a man should grow up to be, that he kicked and starved his dogs, that he cheats shop owners and kills deer out of season, only that he said, "damn it," and "hell." The whole point of this story is how hard it is to tell right from wrong. The father's position is that Judd Travers legally owns that dog, and that even though he mistreats it, the dog should go back to the rightful owner. Marty argues that when you see an animal being mistreated, the right thing to do is save it from the cruelty. "What do you want me to do, Dad? Take the dog back to its miserable owner so it can be kicked and starved all over again?" Marty asks. "I want you to do what's right," his father replies. "What's right?" Marty cries. And this time his dad has no answer. In Louisiana, two parents stood up at the end of a board meeting and told the superintendent that one of the fourth grade teachers was reading a book to the class with swear words in it. They don't permit swearing in their home, and so they don't want reading those bad words at school. Caught off guard, the superintendent said, well, they would have that teacher remove the book from the classroom. When the meeting was over, the teacher and her principal went up to the superintendent and told him that she had planned a whole unit around that book. She had been using it for several years, and that the kids loved it, that it had good morals in it. But the superintendent said he had already publicly announced that it would be taken out, so it would have to go. For 4 months, that battle raged in that community, with families taking sides, and Shiloh made the weekly newspaper for all that time with the pros and cons. But the school book fair banned the book, and so somebody, and nobody knows who, sent a huge carton of books of Shiloh to be sold, and they disappeared like hotcakes. People were going to the next county over to buy the books, where they weren't banned, and it just got to be absolutely ridiculous. Even worse, I think, the superintendent solved the problem by saying that teacher could finish the unit on Shiloh. But from now on, any teacher who reads a book to the classroom that has any possibility of being having two sides against it could have to write a letter to the parents for the kids to take home, telling them that they were going to read a book that might have some bad words in it or some other way to upset the family, and if so, the parents could deem that it was unusable for the classroom. The third thing that I've been accused of is writing things about religion that people don't believe in. In my teenage book, A String of Chances, A String of Chances for teenagers. The daughter of a country preacher delightfully spends the summer helping care for the newborn baby of her agnostic cousin. She falls in love with little Joshua, and when it's about 3 months old, I believe, the baby suddenly dies of crib death. And the hippie community that her cousin is a member is just so saddened by the death of this baby. Donna Jean, the baby's mother, is inconsolable. And Evie, the teenage girl who loves that baby so much, is just beside herself with grieving. The grieving parents dig the grave themselves. They fill it with weeds and clover. And then holding the baby, they crawl down in the grave themselves. They just wanted to go as far as they could with this baby. And they sit there for a while. And then someone reads a poem by Chief Blackfoot about life being a little shadow. Evie is just devastated, and she demands that her preacher father tell her how God can explain that. Her father says that we should simply trust him, and that when our final hour comes, we'll see God's purpose in everything. "Dad," she cries, "those are just words. I want to know in simple, everyday language why Josh had to die, and why God didn't save him, and why now that he's gone, I should believe in anything at all." At the end of the book, Evie is reconciled with the father she loves, but she knows that she'll have to seek answers to those questions herself. When that book came out a number of years ago, an enraged father in Pennsylvania wrote me a scathing letter. He said he was sending a copy to the principal of the high school where he found the book, to the librarian, and to every member of the Board of Education, and to the superintendent of schools, demanding the library. He said that in the book I had denigrated Christianity, promoted pagan practices at the gravesite service and burial, and had thus subjected his Christian children to ridicule. And while it was all right for Evie to question her father's faith, she should have come around to his beliefs by the end of the book. And because she did not, he wanted it forever banned from their library. I later heard from the librarian, the principal, and the Board of Education, and the superintendent that they all refused to ban the book. So the father came to the high school, found the book still on the shelf, and took it home. When the librarian saw what he had done, she demanded that he bring it back, and he refused. So he was being sued by the school for stealing school property. I never did hear the ending of that, but I sent another copy to the library. And then there's sex. For 28 years, I spent 6 months of each year writing the Alice series. I would spend the mornings writing the Alice books, and then the afternoon some other book that I was working on. It started out with just one book, The Agony of Alice, and it was so successful that reviews said lovers of this book will eagerly await her next edition of her life. And I said, what? I'd only planned to write one book. But then I thought, I've fallen in love with this little third grade book. Girl, and Maybe I should continue it. But if I do, she's going to grow older in every book. I don't want to be stuck in a sitcom where the same age people are in it all the time. The publisher didn't know about that, but I said I wouldn't write the series unless I could have her grow, and so they said okay. So in every book, you read her home life, her school life, and her friends and how they all grow up. And I took her, the first book begins in third grade, and when she's in her 60s, her 7th grade class all comes together again to dig up the time capsule that they sold. So you see her growing up into her teenage years, her boyfriend years, her marriage, and finally having children of her own. Well, when Alice is in 5th grade, she and her friends get their hands on a booklet being distributed to girls in the older classes in which it explains menstruation. Her friend is having a sleepover, and they are all very curious about that booklet. It mentions a sperm and what happens when a sperm meets an egg, but it doesn't say one word about how the sperm gets inside a woman. One girl says she thinks a man puts it in there with his penis, and several of the girls are horrified. My parents would never do that, declares one. And they appoint one girl to find out all about it and report back to them at the recess on Monday. And of course, it's Alice. All weekend, Alice worries about how to bring up that subject. And when her dad and brother finally sit down at the table for dinner, and she decides that tonight is the night. And I'm going to read it to you from the book. That night, Lester, her brother, browned the hamburger for chili, and I cut up the green peppers and onions, and Dad made some cornbread. When we sat down to eat, I remembered what I was supposed to ask, but I didn't want Dad and Lester to think I didn't know anything. I know all about sex, I began. I saw Lester roll his eyes. Dad looked up. What? I mean, you don't have to start at the beginning, I said. You don't have to tell me everything. That's good, said Lester, because I sort of wanted to talk about basketball. I ignored him. I know that it takes a man and a woman to make a baby, but I don't know exactly how the man gets his sperm inside the woman, I said. With a glue gun, said Lester, and took a bite of cornbread. Les, said Dad, and then he cleared his throat. I don't know why it is that I can't get a simple answer to a simple question instead of a lot of throat clearing in the whole history of the human race. When a man and woman want to start a family, Dad began. Please don't start with buying a house, I said. Yeah, Dad, cut to the chase, said Lester. So Dad speeded it up. People who love each other want to get their bodies as close together as possible, and when that happens, the man puts his penis inside the woman's vagina. And out comes the sperm, I asked. Something like that, said Dad. Like pee, I asked. Not that much, said Dad. For crying out loud, I'm eating, Lester complained. Sounds messy to me, I said. I thought about it a minute. Where did they do it? In the bathtub? Over the toilet? Lester bolted back in his chair. "I don't believe this," he said. Then he hunched over his plate again. "They do it out in the backyard, Al, and hose themselves down afterward." "Lester," Dad said, "she's asking some basic questions here. They do it in bed, Alice. People make love in bed." "Oh," I said, "all over the sheets?" "It's not as messy as you think," Dad said, "and what mess there is doesn't matter." "Oh," I said again. I wondered if there was anything else the girls wanted me to ask. "How long does it take?" I asked. "Just a few minutes, or as long as a couple wants it to last," Dad said. "Now about those Boston Celtics," Lester began. And then he and Dad talked basketball. Well, it wasn't long before I began hearing from mothers. And one that I always remember began with, in big letters, "How dare you?" She told me that her 9-year-old daughter had brought home a book from school with a very innocent-looking girl on the cover, and so both the mother and daughter decided it would be a wholesome book for her to read. But then the daughter came to her in tears, showing her the pages. "And now the word penis and vagina will be forever ingrained on her mind," she wrote. I'll have to admit that my first mental reaction was, "So? Now she knows her anatomy." Then the mother said that she had always planned that when her daughter reached the age of 10, they would sit down together with the Bible, and she would explain to her daughter that sexual intercourse between husband and wife was God's plan to populate the earth. And now I had ruined it for her. Well, I'm not without empathy. I answered, as I answer all the mothers who write to me, that I could understand how that upset her. But I wondered if her daughter had ever come to her and asked about a pregnant woman and how it got that way. She wrote back a very defensive letter saying that her daughter could ask her anything at all, except about sex, I guess. But for several years, not months, I corresponded with this woman, and I think that she began to open up a little bit and tell me how she was raised. And I think that we had a good relationship going by the time we stopped the correspondence. But one fan letter I'll always treasure began with the words, "Have you ever received a fan letter by a 41-year-old man?" He said, "I read so many reviews about Alice and how often the Alice series were the top of the New York Times list of banned books that libraries were banning, that I felt like I just had to get my hands on one and read it, and now I've fallen in love with that girl, and I want to buy the whole series." God works in mysterious ways.
Let us rise and sing "Come and Go With Me to That Land." Let us join our voices together and say, "We give thanks." For the joy of words spoken, written, danced, observed, we give thanks. For the pleasure of seeing the world through another's eyes, for books that proclaim the splendid sweep of history, and for those authors who strive to fill in the gaps of a shame-filled past, we give thanks. For those who enjoy familiar stories, and for those who transport us to unknown universes, we give thanks. For our faith that stirs us to rise against those who stomp on our freedom. For our faith that emboldens us to agitate for a free exchange of ideas and access to myriad points of view. And for the spirit that awakens us to confront the hatred that motivates the unjust banning of books with courageous love, we give thanks. Go in peace, go making peace, live gently and love mightily, and bow to the mystery, and the donuts await. Go for it.
Our people gonna rise. People gonna rise.
Our people gonna rise.
Our people gonna rise. Listen to our cries through the pain and lies. Our people gonna rise. Our people gonna sing.
Our people gonna sing.
Our people gonna sing. In spite of everything, hear our freedom ring. Our people gonna sing. Our people gonna fight.
Our people gonna fight.
Our people gonna fight for what we know is right. We're marching through the night. Our people gonna fight. Our people gonna grieve.
Our people gonna grieve.
Our people gonna grieve. Whatever you believe, we have the right to breathe. Our people gonna grieve. Our people gonna pray.
Our people gonna pray.
Our people gonna pray. Take our rights away. See you on election day. Our people gonna pray. Our people gonna rise.
Our people gonna rise.
Our people gonna rise. Listen to our cries through the pain and lies. Our people gonna rise.
Our people gonna rise.
Our people gonna rise.